All right, guys, Jeremiah with Riton University here to talk to you about mounting your scope to your rifle. There are a number of things to think about. The first one being safety. So again, we're going to make sure our rifle's on safe. Our magazine is ejected. I'll make sure she's open and clear. So now I have a nice clear weapon to start with. A few things. I like to get all my tools out ahead of time. So I've got a 34 millimeter X7 Conquer 3-24 by 56. So I have matched it with our Contessa by Riton 34 millimeter rings. The height of my rings is important, as we'll see in a minute with our cheek weld. But one other thing I like to do right away is just line up what's called mounting length. This length in here, this is our mounting length. It tells us how much space we have to mount. Why is this important? Well, because I need to have an eye relief, meaning my eye needs to sit far enough back from the scope that it makes sense. And the rings need to be as centered as possible here. One other thing to think about, usually this is a problem with gas guns, AR-15 type guns. You'll see that there's a break in the gun here. I have one rail here and another rail here on the front. I do not want to ever span this gap with my rings. So that's important because those are going to be moving possibly at two different times and could be problematic. So I'll set my scope here. Basically, I kind of have an idea where my eye relief is. And then I just set my rings out here where I can see where they're going to fit nicely. There we go. I have the luxury of having shot this weapon a few times, so I have a pretty good idea where I want my rings. So the first thing I'll do, if you have it memorized, I count how many rails on my Picatinny there. So I'll set that on. And then I'll set this one on. And then again, before I tighten anything too tight, I'll set my scope in here. I want to make sure a few things. I want to make sure that my eye relief is good. So I'll move this back and forth. One thing with eye relief too, always be on maximum power. So turn your scope all the way up, because if you got a good clear picture and good eye relief on high power, you will most definitely have it on low power. So now I move the scope forward and back until I have that perfect big sight picture for me right about here. So I have that there. And I'll tell you, I don't like how far forward this ring is. So what I'm going to do is take it off and just move this ring back a couple spots. It's one of the reasons I didn't tighten anything down. See? There you go. I like my rings to be centered in the possible space that they have there. So back at it again. All good eye relief for me. So I have this set up on the rifle. I'm going to go ahead and torque down the bases, which we usually do about 45 inch-pounds. With automobiles, you hear foot-pounds a lot. Do not be confused. We use inch-pounds. I have a fat wrench. Wheeler makes a wrench. These are just torque wrenches, and what they do is they let you set how many inch-pounds that it will stop at. And so I will dial this one up until I get to 45, which is what I'm going to dial my bases to. And what happens is it just won't let me tighten it any more than 45. That's a good, solid mount. So you'll hear it click here. Yep. Same thing here. So we've got those tightened down. Just going to check one more time. Yep, I still like where my eye relief is there. Okay, so now we've got our rings mounted to the base of our weapon. We need to be level, guys. So, got my two levels here. And why do I have two levels? I have two levels because if I just put a level on my scope and level my scope will be level. But if my rifle wasn't level or the table that I was on wasn't level, then my scope it won't match my weapon. So you need two levels, one for your firearm. I stick it just here on the barrel, and then one here on the top of my scope. So now I have this nice bipod, which is going to let me first level out our rifle. It's kind of hard to see, so just a bubble level here. But I'm going to put this, just centered. So now I know my rifle is level. My scope isn't level now, so it's a good thing I use this. So now I'm going to just turn my scope until this bubble level is center, which was actually quite a bit of movement, so thank goodness for levels. So I'll check them both. They look good. Eye relief looks good. I've tightened my rings down good. The next thing I will do is put what we call the clamshells, or the top of my rings, on. So with all the screws still inserted, I just set it right down on top. Guys, it's really important if you can lay out all of your tools ahead of time. It will save you some frustration in the end, and definitely save you some time. And I already have my tool out for this. Your Riton optics are going to come with whatever tools you might need. And your rings are going to come with whatever tools you might need. So I suggest a torque wrench to make sure that your torque is proper. But you will have all the tools you need to mount up your scope otherwise. So again, just double, triple checking everything else. I'm going to hold my scope down. And kind of like changing a tire, I'll tighten this in a star pattern, if you will. So again, I'm not tightening them down very much. I'm just kind of getting them snugged up. And for our rings up here, we suggest anywhere from 15 to 18 inch-pounds. So again, I just dial my wrench, if you can see that or not, down to 18. And there's just a line that indicates where you're at. Doing it upside down. There we go. Okay, so, and again, I'm not actually using the torque wrench yet. I'm just tightening up my screws, because I'm going to recheck everything before I go tightening anything down all the way. All right, so I've just got those snugged up, and I did move my scope a little while I was tightening, so I will just ever so slightly move it back. Guys, take the time to do this right the first time, and the whole shooting experience will be better. I'm level. I'm going to check eye relief one more time. Again, being careful not to move anything, and the idea is that I can just put my head right down, have my eyes open, boom, perfect sight picture on full power, which I have. So again, make sure I'm at that 18 inch-pounds level again, and now I'm going to go through here and go ahead and tighten these. What you'll have to do is, you'll notice there's a gap. You can squeeze one side of your ring down. You don't want to do that. You want there to be an equal amount of space between the top and the bottom of the ring on this side and this side. And so I will just watch that as I go and not over tighten one side too much. There we go. You can't really hear it, but if you watch the wrench, there you go, it just clicks and it won't go any further. All right, still looking good. We'll continue this star pattern. There we go. One more check. Levels are good, so my scope is level to my rifle. Everything's set up good. Just one last look, make sure nothing's hanging off or weird. As far as space goes, this is awesome amount of space, but I've pre-measured here. You do not want the objective of your optic to be touching the front of your rifle, because again, there is movement and that can cause a problem. So you do want as small a space as possible, right, to keep a low profile. But at least, you know, a few sheets of paper at a minimum should be able to fit underneath your scope, between your scope and your rail. So this is a nice setup. And again, the height of the rings matters for this cheek wheel. I have an adjustable stock piece here, which is kind of nice. But there it is. Mounted our scope up on our Riton optics.